Hello, everyone. Welcome to this new part of our Azure Fundamentals exam practice question series. I hope you have been enjoying the series till now and have benefited from the content. In this video, we are specifically focusing on fill in the blanks type of question that mimic this style of questions you will likely encounter in the Azure Fundamentals exam. It is important that you make yourself familiar with all these different format of questions to succeed in first attempt. So if you are someone who is new to my channel, then don't forget to explore the whole Azure Fundamentals exam practice questions playlist to ace your exam in first attempt. And understand all the formats of questions that you can encounter in the exam. We have covered different formats of questions in different videos. Friends, before we get into the questions for this part of the series, if you are someone who has come across our video at last minute, then you can get access to the PDF file of full set of questions, which are over 420 by becoming a gold member of the channel. You just need to email me at devopshub2023@gmail.com to get offline PDF copy once you have taken the membership. The PDF will also help you in last minute revisions. So with this, let's get into the questions of this part of the series.
Select the answer that correctly completes the sentence. An Azure web app that requires to connect to a on-premise Microsoft SQL server is an example of which cloud? Your options are hybrid, private, multi-vendor, public. Let's first understand the type of clouds. First one is public cloud, where cloud computing services are delivered over the internet that can be shared with various people and organizations. Second one is private cloud, where cloud computing services are delivered over a private network and only accessible to users within your organization. Next one is hybrid cloud, which is a combination of public and private cloud, which is the most common model these days as it gives you the maximum flexibility. Multi-vendor is the combination of multiple public cloud vendors like Azure, AWS, GCP, and so on. Now, in this case, an Azure web app, which is Azure public cloud service, requires to connect to an on-premise SQL server, which is a private cloud. So the combination becomes a hybrid cloud. So the right answer is option A, hybrid. Select the appropriate option to complete the below sentence. Data that is stored in the archive tier of an Azure storage account. Your options are can only be read using Azure Backup, must be restored before the data can be accessed, can be accessed at any time using azcopy.exe, must be rehydrated before the data can be accessed. So the right option is option D. Data must be rehydrated before the data can be accessed. Archive tier is an offline tier optimized for storing data that is rarely accessed and that has flexible latency requirements on the order of hours. Data in the archive tier should be stored for a minimum of 180 days. To read or download the data, you must first rehydrate data to an online tier, which can be either hot or cool. Data in the archive tier can take up to 15 hours to rehydrate, depending on the priority you specify for the rehydration operation. Now, there is a link on my screen. You can go to this link to understand more about access tiers. You might get some questions around different type of access tiers in your examination. Select the answer that correctly completes the sentence. You can use Azure File Sync Agent to sync on-premise data to an Azure. Your options are queue, file share, blob container, data lake, storage container. So the right answer is option B, file share. Now, the Azure File Sync agent enables data on a Windows server to be synchronized with an Azure file share. Now, you can refer to the link on my screen to understand Azure file share more. detailed. Select one of the options to complete the statement below. If the resource group named My Resource Group has a delete lock, your options are: the delete lock must be released in order for the administrator to delete the My Resource Group. Only members of Global Administrator Group can delete My Resource Group. Administrator needs to add an Azure tag in order to delete My Resource Group. Administrator needs to change Azure policy in order to delete My Resource Group. Let's start by looking at option D first. It talks about a change in Azure policy, and policies are used for implementing compliance and organizational rules across your subscription or resource group. So this option is incorrect. Now, option C talks about the use of tags, which is used for grouping of resources, which again makes it an incorrect choice. Option B talks about global resource administrators. Global administrators will have access to delete the lock itself, but the resource group cannot be deleted unless lock is released, which means option B is incorrect. And the right option is option A. The delete lock must be released in order for the administrator to delete the My Resource group. Select the answer that correctly completes the sentence. When you are implementing a software as a service SaaS solution, you are responsible for, your options are: defining scalability rules, configuring high availability, installing the SaaS solution, configuring the SaaS solution. With SaaS, cloud provider hosts and manages the software application and underlying infrastructure. And they also handle any maintenance like software upgrades and security patching. Users just connect to the application over the internet, usually with a web browser or their phone, tablet, or PC. User is just responsible for ensuring user access to the application is governed by the policy of the organization, which basically means set up both authentication and authorization. So the correct answer is option D. They are responsible for configuring the SaaS solution. Now there is a link to the video on my screen. I have already created a detailed video explaining the different type of cloud computing models. I would suggest you to go through it, as there will be few questions around cloud computing service models in AZ-900 exam. I'll put the link to this video in the description of this video as well. To complete the sentence, select the appropriate option in the answer area. Now you have a statement: when planning to migrate a public website to Azure, you must plan to, your options are: pay monthly usage costs, deploy a VPN, pay to transfer all the website data to Azure, reduce the number of connections to the website. So the correct answer in this case is pay monthly usage costs. Whenever planning to migrate a website to Azure, you must plan to pay monthly usage costs. This is because Azure uses the pay-as-you-go pricing model. So you only pay for what you use. And you also need to remember that transferring inbound data to Azure is free of cost. So inbound transfer is always free, whereas the outbound transfer is charged based on where you are transferring, whether you are transferring within the regions or you are taking the data out of Azure. It varies based on the requirement. If Windows Server or Microsoft SQL Server licenses covered by which of the following, you can repurpose the licenses on Azure Virtual Machine. As I have explained in the previous question, so you would already know the correct answer in this case is the last one, which is software assurance. Now you need to remember that there can be multiple variations of the question that you are seeing here. You can just reword a question and a new question will come up. So try to pay attention to the questions that are on your screen. Try to Do not try to memorize them and instead try to understand what is being asked in the question. That will help you to a greater extent in getting prepared for your exam and applying things in the practical environment. I'm sure you wouldn't want to just pass an exam, but you would want to apply things in practical life as well. So it is always advised that instead of learning the questions or answer, you try to understand what is being talked about here and try to apply it in your practical experience. There are four options available, and you need to choose which of them is an Apache Spark based analytics service. Your options are Azure Data Factory, Azure DevOps, Azure Databricks, Azure Synapse Analytics. And the correct answer is Azure Databricks. It is a fast, easy, and collaborative Apache Spark based big data analytics service designed for data science and data engineering. It allows you to seamlessly integrate with open source libraries, spin up clusters, and build quickly in a fully managed Apache Spark environment with the global scale and availability of Azure. Again, you have four options and you need to choose one of them, which provides in-depth information about security, privacy, compliance offering, policies, and features across Microsoft Cloud products. Your options are Microsoft Trust Center, Microsoft Purview Compliance Portal, Microsoft 365 Defender Portal, Microsoft Defender for Cloud in Azure Portal. And the correct answer in this case is Microsoft Purview Compliance Portal. You might see different variations of this question on different places on internet. However, you just need to make sure that the some of the services have their name changed recently, and this is the correct option and the recent name of the service, which is the right answer. To complete the sentence, select the appropriate option in the answer area. In the answer area, you have a statement: an organization that hosts its infrastructure, then dash, no longer requires a data center. Now you need to choose between in a private cloud, in a hybrid cloud, in a public cloud, on a Hyper-V host. So basically you need to choose a cloud hosting option in which the organization doesn't require a data center. So the correct answer in this case is public cloud. The other three options will still require you to manage your own data center in some or the other form. So for example, if you are talking about a private cloud, obviously private cloud is something which is hosted in a vendor's data center or your own data center, but still there is a data center. And in a hybrid cloud is again a combination of public cloud and your own data center or a private cloud. So again, your data center is involved, whereas public cloud is cloud native. So you don't need to manage your own data center. And a Hyper-V host again is an on-premise option. So you have to manage your data center. Again, to complete a sentence, select the appropriate option in the answer area. Requiring a user to enter a password and answer a security question when signing into Azure Active Directory is an example of. Your options are managed identities, multi-factor authentication, role-based access control, business to customer identity services, which is B2C. So the correct answer is multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication is a process in which users are prompted during the sign-in process for an additional form of identification, such as code on their cell phone or a fingerprint scan. So you have four options: Azure Total Cost of Ownership Calculator, which is TCO calculator, Azure Migrate, Server Assessment Tool, Azure Pricing Calculator, Database Migration Assistant. Now the statement is Dash can calculate cost savings due to reduced electricity consumption as a result of migrating on-premise Microsoft SQL servers to Azure. The correct answer in this case is Azure TCO calculator, total cost of ownership calculator. It is used to estimate the cost savings you can achieve by migrating your application workloads to Microsoft Azure. Azure Resource Manager templates use we are talking about ARM templates, and we need to choose what is the format of the ARM templates. Your options are CSV format, JSON format, HTML format, XML format. The correct answer is JSON format. ARM template is a JavaScript object notification, which is also called as JSON file that defines the infrastructure and configuration for your project. The template uses declarative syntax, which lets you state what you intend to deploy without having to write the sequence of programming commands to create it. In the template, you specify the resources to deploy and the properties for those resources. Select the answer that correctly completes the sentence. After you create a virtual machine, you need to modify dash to allow connections to TCP port 8080 on the virtual machine. Your options are network security group, route table, virtual network gateway, or virtual network. And the correct answer in this case is network security group. You can use an Azure network security group to filter network traffic between Azure resources in a Azure virtual network. A network security group contains security rules that allow or deny inbound network traffic to or outbound network traffic from several types of Azure resources. For each rule, you can specify source and destination, port, and protocol. There are going to be many questions around network security groups in the exam. So go through the link on your screen to understand network security group in detail and how they differ from different network components in Azure. Select the answer that correctly completes the sentence. Now you have four options, which is Azure Reserved Virtual Machine Instances, Azure Container Instances, Azure Virtual Machine Scale Sets, Azure Spot Virtual Machine Instances. Which of the following provides access to Azure compute capacity at deep discounts? And the correct answer in this case is Azure Spot Virtual Machine Instances. They provide access to unused Azure compute capacity at deep discounts. Spot VMs offer the same characteristic as a pay-as-you-go virtual machine, the difference being pricing and evictions. Spot VMs can be evicted at any time if Azure needs capacity. So it is highly recommended whenever you are using spot virtual machines, you don't put production workloads on them, because as you would have just listened, they can be evicted at any time whenever Azure needs capacity. The only drawback is they can go anytime, but then you get a lot of discounts when you're using these virtual machines as well. So probably you can put your non-critical workloads on them, which can handle interruptions. To complete the sentence, select the appropriate option in the answer area. Now you have a statement here. Your Azure trial account expired last week. You are now unable to, then you have four options. Basically, your Azure trial account has expired last week and you need to determine which of the listed activities you won't be able to perform. And the activities are access the Azure portal, create additional Azure Active Directory user accounts, access your data stored in Azure, start an existing Azure virtual machine. And the correct answer in this case would be start an Azure virtual machine. You won't be able to start an Azure virtual machine if your Azure trial account has expired. And the reason is a stopped or deallocated VM is offline and not mounted on an Azure host server. So when you try to start it, the VM mounts it on a host server before the VM starts. Now, as soon as the VM is mounted, it becomes chargeable. This is the reason why you are not able to start a VM after a trial has expired.
Select the appropriate answer choice which completes the sentence correctly. An organization that hosts its infrastructure, and your options are in a private cloud, in a public cloud, in a hybrid cloud, on a Hyper-V host, no longer needs to maintain a data center. So basically the requirement is to get rid of maintenance of their own data center. And you can achieve this in a public cloud. Public cloud is a type of cloud computing model in which computing resources such as virtual machine, storage, and services are provided over the internet by a third party cloud service provider like Azure, AWS, GCP, and many more. When you need to delegate permissions to several Azure virtual machines simultaneously, you must deploy the Azure virtual machine, then there is a dash. Your options are to the same availability zone, to the same Azure resource group, to the same Azure region by using the same Azure Resource Manager template. To delegate permissions to several Azure virtual machines simultaneously, you must deploy the Azure virtual machine to the same resource group. Azure resource groups are a logical container for organizing and managing related Azure resources, and permissions and access control can be managed at resource group level. Placing the virtual machines in the same resource group allows you to delegate permissions and manage them effectively, or I would say collectively. Select the answer that correctly completes the sentence. When you transfer data to an Azure resource, it is known as dash traffic. Your options are external, internal, ingress, egress. And the correct answer here is ingress. It's coming inside. Let's look at another similar question. When you transfer data out of an Azure resource, it's known as dash traffic. Your options are again external, internal, ingress, and egress. And the correct answer in this case is egress. So folks, you would have seen just a small variation in the question changes the correct answer. So as I always say, don't try to learn the questions and rather understand the logic behind it. In Azure App Service, a or an dash is the compute resource that Azure provides for hosting a website or web application. And your options are Azure Application Template, App Service Deployment Slot, App Service Plan, App Service Pipeline. And the correct answer here is option C, App Service Plan. So as you can see, an app service always runs in an app service plan. In addition, Azure Functions can also has the option of running in an app service plan. An app service plan defines a set of compute resources for a web app to run. This is what is being asked about in the question regarding the compute resources. And now you know app service plan is the correct answer. When you create an app service plan in a certain region, a set of compute resources is created for that plan in that region. Whatever apps you put into this app service plan run on these compute resources as defined by your app service plan. Each app service plan defines operating system, whether it is a Windows operating system or a Linux. It defines the region, in which region your compute resources are hosted. Then it defines the number of VM instances. It also defines the size of VM instance, whether it is small, medium, or large. It also defines the pricing tier, whether you are using a free, shared, basic, standard, premium, or other premium tiers which are available. Question number 260 of the series. A dash for a managed instance enables data access to your managed instance from outside the virtual network. Your options are private endpoint, public endpoint, secure endpoint, and network endpoint. And friends, the correct answer here is option B, public endpoint. So friends, previously we went through the private endpoint article and now we are going to go through the public endpoint article. I hope you do not have any confusions between them. If you have any confusions, please post your doubts in the comment section and I'll try to answer them as soon as possible. Public endpoints for Azure SQL managed instance enable data access to your managed instance from outside the virtual network. You are able to access your managed instance from multi-tenant Azure services like Power BI, Azure App Service, or an on-premise network. By using the public endpoint on a managed instance, you don't need to use a VPN, which can help avoid VPN throughput issues. Let's now look at why other options are incorrect. Option A, private endpoint provides secure access to the managed instance from within the same virtual network or from peered virtual network. It does not require exposure to public internet. This is one of the reasons, one of the differences between private endpoint and public endpoint. Folks, there can be questions where you'll get both of these in answers. So if you don't have clarity between private endpoint and public endpoint, you can get confused while choosing the options. So make sure to understand both of these concepts clearly. Option C, secure endpoint, could be a term used in various contexts. It's not a standard Azure term specifically related to managed instance. So just a distractor here. Similarly, network endpoint is also a distractor here. This term is not commonly used in the context of Azure managed instances. It may refer to different networking concepts, but it's not specific to enabling data access to a managed instance from outside the virtual network. Select the answer that correctly completes the sentence. An Azure container instance is an example of and which of the following: compute service, identity service, networking service, or storage service. And the correct answer here, folks, is compute service. Azure container instance is an example of an Azure compute service. Question number 264. Again, you have to complete a sentence. Application Insights is a feature of which of the following: Azure Advisor, Azure Application Gateway, Azure Arc, or Azure Monitor? And here the correct answer is Azure Monitor. Application Insights is a feature of Azure Monitor. You have four options, and basically there is a statement: a common platform for deploying objects to a cloud infrastructure and for implementing consistency across the Azure environment. And your options are: Azure Policies provides, resource groups provide, Azure Resource Manager templates provide, and management groups provide. And friends, the correct answer here is Azure Resource Manager templates provide, a common platform for deploying objects to a cloud infrastructure and for implementing consistency across the Azure environment. Folks, you might be tempted to choose Azure Policies here, but Azure Policies are used to define rules for what can be deployed and how it should be deployed. While this can help in ensuring consistency, Azure Policies do not provide the common platform for deploying objects to a cloud infrastructure. Question number 280 of the series. Dash provides the global view of the status of Azure services, regions, and specific resources. And your options are Application Insights, Azure Advisor, Azure Service Health. And friends, the correct answer here is Azure Service Health. Azure Service Health provides a global view of the status of Azure services, regions, and specific resources. It helps you stay informed and up to date about the health and availability of Azure services and regions that your applications depend on. It provides real-time status updates, historical information, and proactive notifications about service incidents and planned maintenance events. This allows you to better manage and optimize the performance and reliability of your Azure services and applications. So friends, I hope you now understand why Azure Service Health has been chosen as the correct answer here. If you still have any doubts, please post them in the comments section. All Azure services that are in public preview are, and your options are provided without any documentation, only configurable from Azure CLI, excluded from service level agreements, only configurable from the Azure portal. And my friends, the correct answer here is they are excluded from service level agreements. You can use, and your options are advisor recommendations, access control IAM, budget alerts, compliance. In Azure, to send email alerts when the cost of the current billing period for an Azure subscription exceeds a specified limit. And friends, the correct answer here is budget alerts. You can use budget alerts in Azure to send email alerts when the cost of the current billing period for an Azure subscription exceeds a specified limit. Select the appropriate answer choice which completes the sentence correctly. When a cloud app can allocate and release resources, it has, and your options are elasticity, governance, high availability, predictability, reliability. And friends, the correct answer here is elasticity. This is question number 333. Select the answer choice that correctly completes the sentence. You have four options: high availability, predictability, reliability, scalability. Which of them ensures access to cloud resources in the event of a service failure? And friends, the correct answer here is high availability. Azure high availability ensures continued access to cloud resources even if there is a service failure, ensuring uninterrupted operation and accessibility of critical services and applications. Again, select the answer that correctly completes the sentence. The cool access tier is optimized, and your options are for data that is accessed infrequently and stored for at least 30 days. For data that is accessed rarely, is stored for at least 180 days, and has flexible latency requirements. For storing data that is accessed frequently. And friends, the correct answer here is, which completes the statement. The cool access tier is optimized for data that is accessed infrequently and stored for at least 30 days. Let's understand the access tiers for blob data in more detail. Basically, the first access tier is hot tier, an online tier optimized for storing data that is accessed or modified infrequently. The hot tier has the highest storage costs, but the lowest access costs. Friends, we'll go through all the four access tiers so you know what to answer if there are different variations of this question. Now, the next tier is cool tier, which is what was our question revolving around. An online tier optimized for storing data that is infrequently accessed or modified. Data in the cool tier should be stored for a minimum of 30 days. The cool tier has lower storage costs and higher access costs compared to the hot tier. So friends, basically the statement that we had in our question was typically what has been mentioned in the cool tier on the Microsoft documentation. Now there is a third tier which is called as cold tier. Remember, there are two different tiers, cool tier and cold tier. Do not get confused if you see both of them listed there. They are both valid options. Now, cold tier is also an online tier optimized for storing data that is rarely accessed or modified. Cool tier is for infrequently accessed data, whereas cold tier is for rarely accessed data, but still requires fast retrieval. Data in the cold tier should be stored for a minimum of 90 days. Now, if you're talking about cool tier, you need to store it for minimum 30 days, whereas if you move to cold tier, you need to store it for minimum 90 days. The cold tier has lower storage costs and higher access costs compared to the cool tier. And the last and the fourth and the last tier is archive tier. It is an offline tier. Now, all the three tiers that we just saw were online tier, whereas the archive tier is an offline tier. It is optimized for storing data that is rarely accessed and that has flexible latency requirements. Now, the difference between cold tier and archive tier is both of them are used for data that is rarely accessed, but if you will use cold tier if you require fast retrieval. But if you do not have any latency requirements or retrieval requirements, you could go to use archive tier. Data in the archive tier should be stored for a minimum of 180 days. That's the different requirement. However, if you are going to choose between cold tier and archive tier, you will choose archive tier most likely if you have any cost limitations. Otherwise, both of them are almost same. However, the difference is cold tier, you need to store data for 90 days a minimum, and for in archive tier, you need to store it for 180 days minimum. Now, based on your requirement, you will have to choose which of the following tier you want to use for storing your blob data. I hope you now understand all the four access storage access tiers that are available for storing blob data. But if you still have any doubts, please post them in the comments section. Azure Site Recovery provides which of the following for virtual machines? And your options are fault tolerance, disaster recovery, elasticity, and high availability. And friends, the correct answer here would be disaster recovery. Site recovery is a native disaster recovery as a service, DRAS. It helps the businesses to keep doing businesses even during major IT outages. Azure Site Recovery offers ease of deployment, cost effectiveness, and dependability. You can deploy replication, failover, and recovery processes through site recovery to help keep your application running during planned and unplanned outages. Again, you need to complete a sentence. The four options are elasticity, geo-distribution, high availability, scalability. Which of them enables Azure resources to be deployed close to users? And friends, the correct answer here would be geo-distribution. You can deploy apps and data to regional data centers around the globe, thereby ensuring that your customers always have the best performance in their region. Select the answer that correctly completes the sentence. You have several virtual machines in an Azure subscription. You create a new subscription, and your options are the virtual machines cannot be moved to the new subscription. The virtual machines can be moved to the new subscription. The virtual machines can be moved to the new subscription only if they are all in the same resource group. The virtual machines can be moved to the new subscription only if they run Windows Server 2019. Friends, you can move a VM and its associated resources to a different subscription by using the Azure portal. For a move across subscriptions, the resources and its dependent resources must be located in the same resource group and they must be moved together. For example, a VM with managed disks would require the VM and the managed disk to be moved together along with other dependent. Auto-scaling is an example of which of the following? Your options are agility, elasticity, geo-distribution, predictability. And friends, the correct answer which completes this sentence correctly is auto-scaling is an example of elasticity. It refers to the ability of a system or infrastructure to automatically adjust its resources, such as computing power, storage, or network bandwidth, in response to changing demands. This elasticity allows for efficient resource allocation, ensuring that the system can handle varying levels of workload without manual intervention and without sacrificing performance or incurring unnecessary costs. You have an application that is comprised of an Azure web app that has a SLA of 99.95% and an Azure SQL database that has an SLA of 99.99%. The composite SLA of the application is, and your options are the product of both SLAs, which is equal to 99.94%, the lowest SLA associated to the application, which is 99.95%, the highest SLA that is associated to the application, which is 99.99%, the difference between the two SLAs, which is 0.05%. And friends, the correct answer here is the product of both SLAs, which equals 99.94%. Composite SLA is usually lower than the individual SLAs because an application that relies on multiple services has more potential failure points. Which of the following supports synchronization between on-premise storage and Azure storage? And your options are Azure Blob Storage, Azure Files, Azure Queue Storage, Azure Table Storage. And friends, the correct answer here is Azure Files. It utilizes Azure File Sync to perform synchronization of files between an on-premise file server and an Azure file share, providing a seamless hybrid cloud storage solution. Select the answer that correctly completes the sentence. You can assign, your four options are blueprint, lock, policy, service endpoint to every Azure resource. And friends, the correct answer here is third option, which is policy. Now, some of you might be confused why I have not chosen lock as the correct answer, because lock can also be applied to every Azure resource. Now, the key to answer this question for me is the difference between the word assign and apply. Whenever you are dealing with locks, you apply them. And whenever you are dealing with policies, you assign them. You can review audit reports and compliance related information for Azure services from, and your options are Microsoft Defender for Cloud, Microsoft Defender for Identity, Microsoft 365 Compliance Center, Microsoft Service Trust Portal. Folks, key to answer this question is that information is needed for Azure services. And for that very reason, the correct answer is Microsoft Service Trust Portal. The Microsoft Service Trust Portal is specifically designed to provide detailed information on Microsoft's security, privacy, and compliance practices. It includes access to various compliance-related documents, including audit reports, compliance certifications, and other trust resources. Now, folks, if the question was talking about information about your resources in Azure environment, then correct answer would have been Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So friends, the key to answer the questions in the fundamentals exam is to find the keywords which will help you eliminate the incorrect choices. When using which of the following, you can group virtual machines into an update domain or a fault domain. And your options are availability sets, availability zones, Azure load balancer, Azure virtual machine scale sets. Friends, the correct answer here would be first option, which is availability sets. Availability sets are logical groupings of VMs that reduce the chance of correlated failures, bringing down related VMs at the same time. Each virtual machine in the availability set is assigned an update domain and a fault domain by the underlying Azure platform. Each availability set can be configured with up to 3 fault domains and 20 update domains. Friends, make a note of these limits as these can form a different question in AZ-900 exam. Thank you for staying till the end of this video, folks. If you have enjoyed the content, please hit the like button and subscribe the channel. If you haven't looked at other parts of the series yet, then explore them as well to get the maximum benefit from our content. Link to the playlist is available in the description section of this video. And stay tuned for more parts in our Azure Fundamentals exam practice question series.